right, welcome. Today on It's All Relational, we are joined by Devrim and Anthony, and I am your host as always, Trevor. I am the chair of the technology committee here at WAMFT. So before we get going further into the content for today, could you both introduce yourselves and give us a sense of who you are and what you do with WAMFT?
And you want to take it? I'll go first. My name is devrim Özkan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist associate and the founder of Vagina Therapy Northwest. And I am the preclinical representative for WAMFT.
Yeah. Anthony?
I'm Dr. Anthony Pennant. As of tomorrow, will be the former program director of Antioch, Seattle, the MFT program, and I am the past president currently of WAMFT.
Yeah, WAMFT has this really interesting leadership structure where there's 3 different presidents at a given time, right? You know, where we have the past president that sits in meetings and offers this kind of mentorship role, the current president, and then the president-elect, right? So, Anthony, that is the role you're occupying, that past president, mentorship kind of role. Now, Devrim, you're talking about how you are the chair of the preclinical committee, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us more about what the preclinical committee does?
Yeah, I act as a representative for people that have just become associates or during their associateship to full licensure. So we do some events that are meant to help us get a footing, like get a grounding on what we're doing. You graduate, you have all this information, you're about to set out into the world and you have multiple options for paths, and then pass the magical gigantic test. So we try and offer things that'll support meeting people in the field, creating community within between supervisors and students and preclinical folks. I work a lot with the student committee and the clinical committee as well.
Yeah.
Just trying to bring people together and bridge that.
Great. Now, you, in the past, the preclinical committee has done Mentor Day, right? Now, recently, I believe we have changed our approach to that.
Yeah, we tried to make it a little bit more casual. So kind of a come as you are, show up, get to know folks, really kind of like a heightened networking ability.
Yeah.
To allow you to meet either a supervisor or find an internship site. Our student person actually scored their internship site exactly that way.
Hey,
so our
that's
goal
awesome.
is just to bring people together.
Yeah, wonderful. So Mentor Days are happening how often now?
So for this year, we have 2 planned. Actually, one is coming right up on July 1st. And because we represent the whole state, the first one will be online so that folks from the eastern side of the state or all over the state, can also show up.
Right. Awesome.
And then October 11th will be the second one, and that will be in person.
Awesome. So you're referencing how for many folks that are in this kind of preclinical phase, the test, right, is a looming kind of obstacle, something to be overcome, right, a challenge. And people have all sorts of feelings about this, right, but it's ultimately, right, 180 question test, right, there's 6 different domains that it's covering. It is an important kind of step for anyone to take towards licensure. Right. And there's a lot of feelings people have about that. Now, Anthony, you're program director here at Antioch. When you are thinking about and conceptualizing how you want your program to work, how did you kind of weave in thinking about the test and helping people pass?
It's a really good question, and I can't take credit, entirely about it, but I can only say what I've continued to do based on those who have occupied my position previously. I think some of the important things that pop up around prepping students to take the test is that, number one, it's an understanding that you are being asked questions as of day 1 after your program, right? And so it's not like you shouldn't be advanced in the field. You don't need advanced knowledge and content and experience with multiple things. It's just what did they teach you in school? And if people remember that it's just the beginning, right, assessment of where they are in the beginning, that's an important part around that. I think the other part too is that how we structured some of the classes is that the content throughout the program, is sprinkled to help people build on that foundational knowledge, but there's a specific class called Theories of Family Therapy that most of the students really enjoy, right? It's just an overview of all of the theory, all of the things. It's a test prep kind of class. And the students generally appreciate that, and they take it towards the end. We always encourage them again to take it towards the end of their plan of studies, and when they're about to graduate, usually the quarter before or 2 quarters before. It's just helpful because you know all of these things like, oh, I know Bowen, I know this, and then I'm doing this in internship, and I'm doing this in sex therapy, and like you just there's a lot of accumulation of information, and to bring it back to say like, okay, but what are the basic foundational check marks and things that you need, and put it in the class. Students generally love it.
Right. So you're speaking about, the kind of orientation of the classes, kind of backloading some of the more specific, like theory related things for folks to reference so that they're more ready to take the exam. Because usually you're taking the exam obviously closer to the end of your experience as a student, right?
That's correct. And, the only thing is that ethics, right? Ethics is a part of that, but people should be ethical very much so during their time. And then here in Washington State, sometimes it gets a little, I mean, we have the national aspects, but, we have two sets of laws also that we have to adhere to that sometimes complicate things for people where it's like, well, are we talking about the state one or the national one? We have to remind people that it's a national exam, so whatever national laws too, in concert to it.
Right. Now, Antioch is famous for having a very high pass rate. What was that? Anthony?
Yeah, a couple years ago we received an award, I think, for having a pass rate of like 98%. So people that were coming through had very, very high like passing rates, and I think it was usually at the first time around. I think that we're similar. We're probably still above 90, 95. The folks that choose to take the exam pass it. And I think it really is because of the theories class in part that they have that well-rounded review. And I think that this is something you said, Devrim, too, so I can pull you in, but like people have better understanding about how to answer questions. I'll leave to what was said to you, but like culture wise, I think, right, we understand about how and what they're asking about, and it's not about from anything from a personal colors standpoint. But I'll leave Devram for you to share what you said prior because it was important.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been gathering as much information as I can to offer it to the preclinical folks. And some of the best advice that I got was answer questions like you are a white practitioner. And it saddens me sometimes because my understanding is that they just updated the test, but it's still kind of set in that holding space of
Sure.
who is practicing and why.
Right. 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 So that idea of kind of cultural competence maybe has not hit the test yet, So there's a lot of things like this, obviously, that, are extremely slow, right, to evolve and adapt, right? So when you say something like, answer this like a white man, right? I'm a white man, so I am aware of kind of the concept of what you might be referring to. But what are some ideas or thoughts y'all have about how to think about that or how to embody that, as you're approaching the test?
You can go, Devram. I can go, but
Having not taken the test.
well, I think it's an interesting thing because I think that even sometimes the way the base content in books have been written and sometimes taught about echoes that same thing. And so, you get this like, well, this is how all families will react to Bowen, or this is how all families will be conceptualized according to Bowen, and everybody falls in that. Right? I won't say there's nothing wrong with Bowen, but Bowen has kind of fallen, I think, out of flavor a little bit because, our society has changed. I think I tell the students, just keep that in mind that language about how things are like language and the content, the structure of the questions are that way, and like don't overthink it. I think is the other part, right? And if you overthink, well, do they mean what happens if you say this to a person, or if you that word, do they understand what that word is? Like most 9 times out of 10, you've gone far. But and to expand a little bit what you said about what might need to change, I think the people that write the tests need to maybe confer with other folks, other program directors or our accrediting body, right, around what are the information and things that people really need to know about and who's practicing, right? And what does that look like with folks and how does that match their identity and the language that they use?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. Right. So trying not to overthink it, like you're saying, right. And a lot of change that could or should happen around this. And the challenge, I think, for a lot of folks, probably Devrim in your committee that you're working with, right, is that this is the test that they are having to take, right? This is the test that's going to be in front of them. So they got to figure out, how do I pass this dang thing, right? So that I can get licensed, right? That's ultimately the thing, right? This is something you got to do, cross off the list to be able to get licensed. So, Devrim, as a person that that, is not taking the test yet, what are some of your anxieties or thoughts about this? How are you feeling about it?
Having not taken any tests, I'm a graduate of Antioch University, so I'm
Great.
very
You got a great
familiar.
chance, 98%
I
chance.
heard that and everything lightened inside of me. Um, there wasn't a lot of test taking. So it has been outside of the theories class. It was mostly like, here's what I've learned. I'm going to tell you, we're going to have a conversation about what it is that we've just adhered to. So the test taking itself makes me nervous. And that part makes, like trying to get out of my own head and out of my own way to do that. Plus it's a really long test. Yeah.
Right.
That fear of just getting in my own way is probably the number one thing.
I totally get that. Yeah. I remember going into this. So, I passed it. I took it for the first time in 2016. And I remember kind of going into it, someone told me like, hey, no matter what, after 180 questions, you're going to think you didn't pass, and I resonated with that after my experience, right? I was like, going through this and, question after question, and it really, can muddle your brain, right?
Yeah.
And by the end of it, it's very hard to feel like I passed, or I'm like feeling really good about where I'm at, right? So very normal experience to be, anxious or concerned about it in that way.
And that wording from the theories class, I think, and Anthony, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think some of those are from old tests. So like the wording was very bizarre sometimes. You would read it and I would sit and go, what are they actually asking me? Like, it's just like set up in a way that feels tricky. There's some like tomfoolery in there. So
Yes.
that part is a little overwhelming too.
Right.
You're not incorrect at all. It's, and again, that wording matches what the exams are asking for in some level, right? About how they structure and how they think of these things. But that's part of the prep, right? Is that we give you exactly what you need.
Yeah. And so much of what is set up, this is another thing I think that ends up, especially with community mental health folks, like people that have chosen to dedicate their time in community mental health, which is so needed. You don't have the funding necessarily. You're not making top dollar doing that job. It is definitely a labor of love. But then even practice tests are expensive. Like in order to do the AMFTRB practice test, it's like the same cost as the test itself, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So if you're trying to get prepared by taking this practice test over and over again, every single time it costs you. And there's some tools out there that I found that are like, one of my professors turned me on to an app that you can download on your phone that has like daily quiz questions, and you can do like bigger tests. If you have time to sit down, you get to kind of prioritize how you spend your time.
Right.
So that can be, but I paid out of pocket for it. It was still $100 to do and use that every day.
Now, devrim, that's kind of the thinking behind you starting this exam study group, right, for the preclinical committee?
Yeah, I've tried. So far, we've done some body doubling, which it didn't have a huge hurrah. I tried to set things that I thought would be helpful for me.
Hey, not a bad place to start.
Yeah, and I'm open to, if anybody out here is listening to this and is an associate and you have specific ways that you would like us to gather, please email me. We will leave contact information for that because I really want to give the people what they need, but it's hard to figure out what it is. We've thought about doing trivia, doing some Q&A sessions with people that have just recently taken the test, especially since it just changed.
Right.
And then offering like an email list of things that they can focus their time on.
Right. So you're wanting to kind of create more resources for preclinical WAMFT members to be able to, avoid having to maybe spend a lot of money out of pocket to do practice exams or join up together and do things like that. Right. That's the sort of thing that the preclinical committee is trying to do more of, it sounds like.
Yeah. We really just want to give you guys what they need,
Yeah.
Anybody that's in that same boat, freshly new into the world.
Yes. Right. So, Anthony, what was your experience taking the test? When did you take it?
That's a good question. I took my test in 2014, so a little bit ago, and I remember that I was like, I am not a good test taker, but like I've been in school, so I guess I can do this. I remember knowing that I had to get up really early on a Saturday, and I'm not an early person. If y'all know me, that's just not at my roundhouse like that. And I tried to track how many questions I was due. I knew that I answered right. I knew that I answered wrong. I thought that maybe I answered correct, and I thought that maybe I answered incorrect, and that helped me manage my anxiety in the moment. But outside of that, like I think after a certain amount of questions, like you said, Trevor, like it was it. Like My brain was not doing what it needed to do, and I like hit a wall, and I was just answer and get through what you need to. And my brain was mushed literally for the rest of I think the weekend. Like I could not do anything. But thankfully I passed the first time around, and I think what helped me the most is because I'm also a neurodivergent person, so studying is like really difficult for me on many levels. But I studied no more than 30 minutes a day, I think a month before. And I used like free flashcards, things that were online. I got all my old syllabi. I pulled out things, went to the library when I could, because I did not also want to spend $500 on some green book, right, that says they're going to pass that, and I'm not going to be able to sit down and study anyway. So I just did 30 minutes a day, and that really helped me, because anything outside of that, I'm not remembering. So that was my experience.
Right. So your approach was, 30 minutes a day and trying to access as many free resources as you could, right? There are a lot of things out there, kind of like you're referencing devrim, right, to do that, right? My experience, I would say, was fairly similar. I wouldn't say that I had nearly as focused even of a study regimen as you did, right? I got a book from the library and I read the first couple chapters, skipped away. I skipped to some free test prep questions and was like, oh, I'll probably be fine, and yeah, similarly, I felt the funny kind of thing about this was after I took the test, like I said, similar to you, Anthony, felt horrible after, right? And was just went home. I was like, I know that I didn't pass. So then is when I like bought the like fancy, study thing. And I was like, all right, I got to get ready now for the next time I'm going to take it because I know that I definitely failed, that time. But lo and behold, I passed, and the money was spent. So what are you going to do, at that point? But that's just what it can be like, right? And kind of to your point earlier, Anthony, useful as much as possible in these situations to not overthink, right? Because when you get really caught in the like this question, I like have to get this one right or make sense of it, then you're just going to be wasting precious, brain cells that you're going to need for the whole, 2-hour extravaganza.
For sure. The other thing I think is important for people to know too is that if they need accommodations, that's something to ask for with official test taking. So that if that means extra time, being able to get up or whatever like that. So definitely like ask because you can get it and it is helpful and it does not follow you. I think that's the thing that people get really worried about. Like, if I ask for accommodations, does that mean that like I'm gonna be labeled as having a disability someplace? No. It's for that particular test time, and I wish that I had asked for something like that. But we're at I think a time in our practice right now that we don't have to suffer. We can get the support that we need. So I just want to make sure that is really clear for folks to know.
Absolutely.
They
Absolutely.
also, I was just looking at the website, they now offer like you can do a trial run. So that for folks that really, like if you're neurodivergent or you're just a nervous test taker in general, you can actually go through the whole process of like checking in, putting in your name, putting in your information, showing up to the test site, getting a feel for what is happening so that it's something that you've done before and it calms your nerves a little bit. But also, again, you have to pay for that.
Yeah. Right. Right. Now, obviously, if you went to Antioch, your chances are even better. But, a lot of folks do pass, right, the test. And a lot of folks pass on the first time. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if you don't pass, right, that it needs to be a big thing, right? As a narrative therapist, I'm always interested in like what, experiences we assign meaning to, right? And I don't necessarily think about passing the test as being this indicator of clinical skills per se, right? It's a thing you have to do, right, to get licensed, but it doesn't necessarily have to mean anything about your clinical skills. I have a really good friend who's a LMHC, and he's from Montenegro, and English is a second language for him. And it took him 7 times to pass the test, right? And that for him, he's a very resilient guy, right? But it was really, really demoralizing, right? But still extremely brilliant clinical mind. And so that's an important thing I just want to highlight, right? If you don't pass the test, that doesn't have to mean anything. It just means that, you got to take it again, right? So, Deborah, I guess I'm curious for you when you think about yourself and other folks that are preclinical, how are they thinking about, what it means to pass the test or not? the first time?
I think the folks that I've had contact with are mostly not thinking about it at all.
Yeah,
I think like avoiding it until you like last possible chance that you do.
sure. Yeah.
I tend towards the get it out of the way person. So I'm very much like get in, get out. Just try
Yes. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
and you'll deal with
Yeah.
what you find. But I was
Right.
thinking about your friend and really what better therapist than someone who just keeps showing up?
I know. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah.
Like that kind of perseverance is really
Right.
admirable.
Right. So, Anthony, what advice would you give to a different program other than Antioch that, maybe people don't have as much success right out of the gate? Or for people that maybe are struggling more with the test or needing to retake it, or, developing maybe more of their a negative kind of meaning making around it.
It's a good question. I think the first thing is just know that like you can't undo it, right? And like if you go hard and difficult and I didn't, then that doesn't give you much room to move forward. And I mean, if this probably is a little applicable too, because I remember from this is not the test, but my driver's license and my permit, I failed both of those tests when I was 15 and 16. And having a father who is an immigrant was like, you didn't study enough. And I'm like, but I can't, it's not all that. But I had to identify what I needed in order to feel more comfortable and to get it done. And so when I realized with that, like test taking and all these things and studying were really difficult for me in high school, then I kind of pulled that forward for this. And so, for folks that are having or have had an experience where they have failed, I would say give some time to like just be, right? And then like what do you think that you might have missed about your own studying or your experience during that time? Because it's like the test, like again, you take it so seriously, like, well, I thought they meant this with this question and I was overreading everything. Or like, you didn't take serious the things that you needed to about like your own study habits or what it is that you needed, right? And so, I say that, but I hope that it is not like received in a way like you're wrong. But again, that's, don't make it about a persecution about what you don't have, right? Figure out what it is that you need. And then I think places like WAMP and things that you're doing, Devrim, like, we talk about that. We have lots of people that are here that can support folks, no matter what school that they are in or where they are, to be able to get the success that they need.
Yeah, and Devin, I think you really have a great invitation here. It sounds like for folks, you want people to reach out to you to help kind of co-create what an exam study group could look like or what exam study resources could look like.
Yeah. I think figuring out what each person needs and being,
Hmm.
and not that we're going to do that every single time, but we can definitely, I'm happy to host multiple sessions where each one is dedicated to a different learning style. I think that would be super powerful. And a lot of times, I think many of us, especially coming out of class, some of us are really shy. I am not one of those people, but some folks really hold back on like sharing what they think is going on. If it is more intimate, it might be a better opportunity to have those conversations to let things sink in. So maybe there's a future for us to host like an ethics based, not debate, although my heart is like, yes, let's debate ethics. It's just so much fun.
Yeah.
But other like parts of the test where we could maybe focus on specific areas and go at it together.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's exciting. So, Devin, you're saying people can reach out to you, right? They can just directly reach out to you and help work with you on what the best path forward would be for the pre-clip.
My email box is open for you.
Okay, great. So we're going to have that listed here at the link in bio at our Instagram and your emails online at the WAMFT website. People can find you and then, go from there.
Yeah.
Cheers to many happy returns here for folks that are going to take the exam. I'm a believer, right? And y'all, the sooner you can take it to your educational experience, the better, right? But, go get them.
Fingers crossed.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. And I'll look forward to talking with you more later.
Thanks, Trevor.